being the case, I'm going to ask for a motion to move our item number 2, an executive session, to the end of our agenda this evening to allow for as many of us to be there as possible. Could I ask for a motion to move that to the end? Mrs. Burns, thank you. A second, Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? That'd be all present. Okay, if you could join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, moving right along, we have our approval of items by consensus, and we have some warrants and minutes that we need to approve. The minutes from October 12th, regular session. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from October 12th, please. Mrs. Kane, seconded by Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? Thank you. We have warrants G403, R202, R203, L08, L09, L10. I'll ask for a motion to approve those, please. Mrs. Burns?
So moved.
Second, Mrs. Kane. All those in favor? That's everyone. We have warrant CB02. Could I have a motion to approve? Mrs. Bonish. A second. CB02, Mrs. Kane, thank you. All those in favor? One abstention, Mrs. Burns. And we have warrants SPED 03 and SPED 02. Can I have a motion to approve SPED 03 and SPED 04?
Four, yes.
Sorry, I said 02, didn't I? SPED 03 and SPED 04. Mrs. Kane, thank you. Second. Mrs. Bonish, thank you. All those in favor? Great, thank you. One abstention. All righty. We have, next up, we have our student representative report. We have Ashley Bennett. Kim, please.
Good evening, everyone. It's good seeing you
Good
again.
evening.
A lot has been going on in the high school since we last met. Last Wednesday, the annual Mr. and Mrs. WHS took place, hosted by Senior Class President Mr. Russell Abbott and Vice President Eric Gardner. The competition was a lot of fun and everyone did extremely well. Ultimately, the victors were Connor Kilbride and Kate Otis, so congratulations to them. Last Thursday, Club WHS also hosted a successful clothing swap for students to bring in clothing, shoes, and accessories that they don't wear, and were able to exchange them for other items that were brought in. There also is a contest currently going on for the WHS 2017 yearbook covers. Students submitted covers with a 90s theme, and the winners will be announced pretty soon. Tomorrow is there's an interesting thing that's taking place, and it's an international cooking workshop featuring Italian cuisine hosted by the WHS World Language Department. So that'll probably be pretty tasty. And the end of the quarter is wrapping up as well, with grades closing next week. So we have lots going on, and hopefully students can get their end of term stuff that they put off in. That's all I have to report this week.
Great, thank you for your report, Ashley.
Thank you.
Always informative. Our next item of business would be the superintendent's report, which we're going to skip over this evening. So moving on to old business. The first item under old business is approval of a February 16th, 2018 Wilmington High School out-of-state field trip to Cuba. And as you recall, we moved this item from October 12th so we could gain some more information. We certainly had a few questions. The folks that are going to be hoping to run the trip have prepared a packet for us that might answer some of the questions that we had. And would you ladies like to share anything? Sure, please join us at the microphone.
So it's a 18-page document that we put together addressing the questions that were brought up at the last meeting. The first page, just, it was a Google Doc, so some of the information is actually linked to articles that regarding trips done by different high schools. And then there's also some links specifically going to the tour sites. But we can make sure that you guys get an electronic copy sent to you so you'll be able to access the interactive features. But the first couple pages are just kind of outlining the connections to the Common Course and frameworks. And then on the back of the second page there where it says tour details, this is kind of where we pick up with some of the questions that were posed at the last school committee meeting. Some of the questions that were asked, Mr. Gallagher actually provided sufficient really answers to the questions as far as like which students would be able to sign up for the trip. And really by the time that the tour actually takes place, it'll be mostly juniors and seniors on that trip. And should not enough students sign up, that's where, we would try and, gather, momentum back towards signing up and getting, maybe push the date back, that sort of thing. As far as the question posed regarding how much preparation students would have beforehand regarding the different cultural differences and laws that they'd need to be aware. We would run a series of mandatory meetings that students and parents would need to come to pre-travel, where most of that information would be discussed with both the students and their parents, as well as there'd be a code of conduct form that would help kind of address some of those concerns. We ran it with the World War II tour that was run last year, and it seemed like it worked out pretty well. The third page kind of breaks into the tour pricing there, but on the back of that page is the Explorica cancellation policy. So I know that there were some concerns about what happens with cancellations and refunds, and then specifically regarding travelers insurance, and whether or not it would be required that students take the travelers insurance. When we did the World War II tour, we strongly encouraged the students and their families to take advantage of those travel insurance options, and there are a couple of them, but it was really left ultimately to the families to decide whether or not they wanted to sign up for those. So the back of the fourth page of the packet kind of gives kind of an overview of the different insurance plans that are available, and some of them are much stronger than others. Most of the students that went with us on the World War II tour actually took advantage of the Plan Plus insurance package, even though I believe only 2 students who had it actually needed to use it. And again, with this tour, we would certainly encourage parents to strongly consider signing up for one of those insurance packages as part of the process. One of the big questions I think that was asked was about whether local schools have done this. And at the front of the 6th page there, we've listed, there are 5 schools in the general area. Hamilton Wenham High School recently did a tour just last March, I believe, and there's actually a link to their little video that they did, sort of highlights from their tour. Really, they had an excellent excursion. It was part of their foreign language department's trip, but they had the opportunity to do some really great projects with the group that they traveled with. Belmont Hill School is noteworthy as well. Business teacher Russ Carroll, his son actually just returned from that school's trip to Cuba and had an excellent time. And then there are specifically 3 schools that went with Explorica's tour, in particular Bedford High School, Somerville High School, and Sahegan High School in Amherst, New Hampshire. And all of them rated the tour and the tour guide as excellent in those trips. And we do have some contact information, so if you guys wanted to reach out specifically to individuals who ran those, you'd be more than welcome to do that, please. We did include a copy of the code of conduct, and I know that was another concern, was that Explorica mentioned the option of students drinking alcohol on trips where countries allow minors to drink. We would definitely keep the school policy with regards to that in effect. There would be no consumption of alcohol, and really the policy is keeping every student in line with what the district policies and the school policies regarding just general behavior and expectations. And every student is required to sign that prior to leaving the country. There was a question about whether or not tour guides would have to be quarried. Since these are individuals that are outside of the United States, they can't be required to be quarried, but Explorica does do extensive background checks on all of their employees and anybody that they bring in to do individual tours. But they also have nice policies in place to really kind of protect both the students and the chaperones so that they make sure that nothing, of concern might occur there with those individuals. So the background checks for tour guides page sort of outlines that policy that Explorica has put together. And then I believe there was a question about whether or not parents would be allowed to chaperone. And we know that from, I think there was a conversation about a trip last year about whether or not parents would be able to chaperone. I think it was a performing arts trip. I know this, the school policy, IJOA, does provide an option for parents to chaperone. I mean, we'd be, if you guys were looking for us to include a parent chaperone, we could certainly see if there was room with the kind of the cap in place that we have for potential trip enrollment, if that's possible. But at this point, really, it's just the 3 teachers that are proposing the trip that are going to be chaperoning at this point. So that's pretty much, I think we hit all of the questions that you guys asked, but if you have any other specific ones, I can try and answer them on the spot for you.
Great. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
putting this together. This is very, very helpful and very thorough. Questions? Mrs. Keen?
This isn't a question, this is, probably I'm going to make a comment, but at the bottom of page, where it says tour pricing on the top,
Yeah.
when I was going through, I just glanced by, and I just wanted to make sure this says what I think it says. We, as teachers, do not accept the rewards package.
Correct.
I think that is so impressive, and it just reflects what we have, how our teachers are so committed to our students, and I just want to congratulate you on that. I think that's fantastic. What they do that is available to tour leaders, and I know you probably didn't bring it up because it's like tooting your own horn, but I think people should know about this, that instead, we take the rewards and use the cash value for the trip. For example, in Europe, we purchased T-shirts and rented wireless hotspots. I don't know what that is, for students. My grandson will be so mad at me for saying that. We purchased soft drinks at dinner, tickets for the Eiffel Tower, and all additional gratuities. For example, tips for the hotel staff and local tour guides. I just think that is so wonderful. It should be recognized and noted.
That's excellent.
Thank you so
Mrs.
much.
Keen. Appreciate that. Mrs. Burns?
I have to say, coming from an art background that I do, and knowing, and I should say only hearing about the culture that Cuba holds, I was very excited, but I do, and I know Explorica has taken, we've gone through Explorica for many field trips abroad, which I really don't have any reservation with them, because they've always seemed, and everything that's always been presented with regards to the field trips have always been well vetted, in my opinion, down to the insurance binders involved. My biggest concern is, and putting my own jealousy aside, is that at this point, Cuba is still, there's a lot of sanctions against Cuba. I'm glad that that information with regards to other schools, I think is helpful. But my biggest concern is that the tourism piece, I know this falls under a different general classification, and I wanted, my mother's instinct superseded the excitement of how wonderful this would be. I went on the State Department's website and just, did some research because of what really drives me is the sanctions that are still imposed. The United States the UN met today to discuss further opening of trade with Cuba in that deliberation, and the United States, along with, I think, Iraq or Iran, abstained from that vote. It's still evident to me that there is concern, and I know Cuba has always had their borders open to certain groups, artists, organizations, journalism, those educational the word is escaping me, the exchange programs with students. I just have to say that I'm still a little reserved, and I think it's something that should not be forgotten, but I'm just not, I'm wary about doing it this far soon with regards to the new breaches of friendship that have just, I think are in their infancy stages. And until, I think I would feel more comfortable saying yes to a tour, a field trip of this nature if the tourism sanction was lifted. Where knowing what we know with regards to the human rights violations, that, and in reading some of the licensure as to what is allowed, specifically stating, no interactions with political officials or those who, it's specifically spelled out in other licensure. That really makes me quite nervous at this juncture. And I just wanted to share my concerns with regards to this. I think it's definitely something I would want to see in the future, but I just don't feel comfortable with our students going around. I do want to say that I've been told that they have excellent medical care, so that was a good thing, because a lot of people are flocking the country now.
Mrs. Kane.
I feel similar to what you're saying, and so I was thinking about it more. Ultimately, it's the parents who are allowing their students to go on the trip or not. But I'm wondering, does the school bear any responsibility? Would you know that, Mr. Gallagher or Mr. Ruggiero? If something happened on the trip, as far as the borders, this thing keeps making noise. As far as the borders are concerned, is it the parents because they have ultimately allowed their children to go, or is it the school because we opened it up to the children? Do we have any recourse there?
Well, I think when you're looking at these type of trips and having a lot of the parent meetings and really just laying it all out for the parents ultimately giving permission, for their child to go on a trip. So it's a little bit different than if you were taking an entire class and it was part of the curriculum. So I think the school department would have a lot more responsibility in that aspect. This aspect, it's more voluntary. We're providing the chaperones and the support and tying into the curriculum. But so that's kind of how I see it, depending on, whatever the issues are. So it's not where it's, you're taking all of like an entire class to like the science museum for the day. So this, and it sounds like that this is a whole year ahead, so it's not this spring, you're talking about a whole nother year. So as you go through this process, I think the parents can be well informed of kind of everything on, so there's a lot of time to really dig into this individually as parents to support their child to go on the trip. I mean, and I think it's very important that there are some other schools within this area. I'm sure if you pool the whole Commonwealth, there may be more schools, but just in this area, you have 4 or 5 schools that have already done this with success. And I appreciate the teachers providing information where you can even call, I think, some of those other school districts and some of those advisors and follow up with some of those questions.
Thank you.
Mrs. Prince?
We're expected to vote tonight on this, correct? Is my understanding?
That would be the plan if we don't feel that we're ready.
All right, I just, because I certainly agree, and maybe it's overly caution on my part, but so much with the presidential race 2 weeks away, not knowing where that would land us 18 months from now, my concern is if, God forbid, students start investing in this trip at this juncture, and that we, for the safety of our staff and students, feel we need to cancel it, money's lost by the travel agency. Do you know if let's say the trip was rescheduled, you know what I mean, if that, God forbid, should occur, would the monies invested just be rolled over to that new timetable?
I think when you know, from my experience, especially, we had some overseas trips to France and Germany, and a couple of years ago when, you know, unfortunately, there was some, you know, terrorism going on, and I think there was a kind of a ban and a hold. So we did a lot of research and investigating, you know, if we canceled the trip as a school district, or if the state canceled the trip, there wasn't, you weren't gonna, you know, I guess get a lot of your funding back. So I think that that's really important as, you know, you approve this, and as everyone's moving forward, that parents need to understand. So there could be a ban on, you know, a year from now, on all overseas trips
Oh,
as.
could be in 2 weeks.
Correct. And so then, you know, I think you do receive some monies back, you know, at the
I
time.
know that was broken down with regards to the
$500
timetable.
or $600,
It's-
but I think that's part of, it's part of the process. As the parents commit to this, I think all of that's on the table too, so.
When things occur, only because it's the
I
United States
understand.
relationship with
Sure,
Cuba,
right.
and it's, as opposed to going into a country that's been, you know, we've had for over 50 years, long before I was even born. I think that's where my nervousness is, and I think it's the infancy of those relations at the present time, and the history, you know, which I think is fascinating. I'm a big
Right.
Hemingway fan. I would love to see his home
Right,
down there.
right.
But
Well-
that's just with my with, you
Yeah.
know, not knowing with the government, I just,
I think that, you know, I think it's a catch-22.
Yeah, I think you're
I
right,
think
yeah.
that we had some of our trips were in Germany, and because of, you know, the overseas and kind of the way the world is, I think there's a lot more supervision and understanding of kind of these trips, and, you know, from the last 5 years to now. So, for example, our students, when they were in Germany, they spent a lot of time more in the villages, and then the big events and the big tours that they went on. It was very, I guess, some of the most secure areas, for, you know, because of, you know, terrorism and all of that. So I think as people are doing the overseas trips from schools to schools, I think there's a lot more precautions that are built into these trips than there were 10 years ago.
forgive me and respectfully, and you're right, and I just, in talking about Germany or France, or, I just see it not as apples to apples, because we've had tourism in Germany and France for decades now, after World War II, but with Cuba, it's a new,
It's different.
and there's other aspects that, I just want to be ensured that the safety in, you know, that every plausible factor is considered, that, and I just don't know if I'm there right now, per se, but my colleagues may certainly feel otherwise, so, but thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.
Any other discussion or comment, Mr.
I think
Talbot?
the one thing that kind of I wanted to just get a point across, I went online and looked up this company and saw a lot of complaints about the refund policy, that they kind of played with the numbers, saying, well, we bought tickets, you know, so we're going to deduct for that, and you get the tickets, and you can get and it was like all the same complaints about this one particular company. I'm not sure, and I'm sure there's complaints about the other ones. I was just looking at this one because this is one we selected. So I'm concerned about, you know, parents giving up $500, $600, you know, $1,000, and then something happens. You know, somebody dies, or, you know, the State Department puts a ban on it, or something changes, then they're out $600. Oh, well, we get $400. That's a lot of money to be losing. The other thing is, for me, is that, you know, I hope that we impart in our kids that this is a communist country. Their laws are polar opposite to ours. And, you know, that what we take for granted here, you know, there can, you know, get you put in jail, and mommy and daddy can't just come and get you out and bail you out. It's a whole new world, and I just, you know, hope that we, you know, impart that on the kids, that by visiting here, it doesn't mean you can take, pictures of whatever you want. They can take it away from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think it'd be a great trip, but I'd be concerned about the money and just the safety, just because the cultural differences are different.
Mrs. Bonish?
So, I feel good about the research that's been done, and as Mr. Gallagher said, it's a voluntary trip. So it's not that, they're not being forced to go. It's voluntary. The parents know, they get the same paperwork. They can get the travel insurance. They know what they're getting into by choosing to go. They don't have to go. So,
Mr. Bjork?
Actually, Ginny just articulated pretty much what I was going to say. I really like the fact that we've got several schools that have gone and rated the trip as excellent. My question is, what's the timing on our commitment? When do we have to commit?
The dates are still fluid, so really until we have school committee approval, we can change, we can work with the representative from Explorica.
I tend to think this is a tremendous opportunity. And admittedly, we don't know what the political climate is going to be 18 months from now, but I think if the parents are well aware of the risks and they are interested in sending their children, I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
Any further discussion or comments? So we have before us the question to whether or not to approve the Wilmington High School Cuba field trip request for February 16, 2018. I'd ask for a motion to approve. Mrs. Bonish, a second. Mr. Bjork? How many in favor? Okay, we've got 5. Okay, thank you. Okay, under old business, we have another item, and that would be policies. We have a second reading. If we go back, seems like a lot has happened in the past six weeks or 6 weeks or so. But I didn't want them to get lost in the shuffle. We do need to do our standard second reading and possibly a vote to approve. We have policy IHAMB, which is teaching about alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. We have policy JICH, which is alcohol, tobacco, and drug use by students prohibited. And we have policy JLCOD, that should be administering medicines to students. Is there any discussion? Let's take the first one, IHAMB. Teaching about alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. So this is our second reading. This has already been through our policy subcommittee in the summer, I believe. Any questions, comments about policy IHAMB? It's a mouthful. Looks like no questions, no comments, no discussion. Okay, so I will ask for a motion to approve policy IHAMB. Mrs. Burns?
So moved.
Why I'm having trouble with that tonight. And a second, Mr. Talbot, thank you. All those in favor of approving? We've got unanimous on that one, thank you. Okay, JICH, which is alcohol, tobacco, and drug use by students prohibited. This is our second reading. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing no questions, comments, or discussion, I'll ask for a motion to approve JICH. Mrs. Bonish. Mr. Talbot, second. All those in favor? I think we got unanimous on that one. Okay. And lastly, we have policy JLCD, which is administering medicines to students. Any questions, comments? Mrs. Burns?
And forgive me if this was asked at the first reading. In the paragraph, if the school district wishes medical personnel to train non-medical staff in the administration of nasal naloxone, The school committee shall vote to approve such training, and the superintendent will ensure that medical personnel have a written protocol which complies with medical directives and regulations from the Department of Health. Can I ask you simply, is that necessary? Is that a given that would be something that would be brought forth and we would do so? Or does it have to be in policy to be the proper protocol?
Mrs. Bonasher, Policy Subcommittee.
I just didn't know
Do you
what the
remember
thought maybe behind it pertained to. It sort of sits with me, sort of like, do we think that maybe, do we need to train additional personnel or no? And that's what it kind of drives my question.
If I recall the discussion during the subcommittee, this is something that has really come to the forefront recently.
Okay.
So we wanted to include it in the policy without committing ourselves at this point to training until we decide whether we want to train additional people. Does that sound familiar, Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm asking, this may be not possible, is at what juncture would that determination be made? I'm just curious. I'm not sure if it's driven from other state or MASC suggested. And if you can't answer it, that's fine. I mean, I think it can't hurt sitting in there. I just thought I'd ask the question is all.
Yeah, I think we're still getting used to, we're not getting used to, but we're still exploring the uses of it.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Is that, again, I don't want to,
I mean, it was 3 months ago, so
I'm sorry.
I don't,
And I would just say, a comment that I think the wording is vague enough that if we have to tweak it as we get experience, or other districts get experience and we learn from that,
It can be revisited.
it could be revisited, but I think it covers us for now, which is what was the intention.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate
Great.
that.
Any other questions or comments, discussion on JLCD? No? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve JLCD, administering medicines to students.
So
Mr.
moved.
Bjork, second, Mrs. Burns, all those in favor? Great, okay. We've covered those. Under new business, I believe we have a presentation on our district libraries and media centers.
Thank you for this tonight. Being new in Wilmington, I just want to say that I was really pleased to walk into a fantastic group of librarians. They're very forward-thinking, enthusiastic, professional, and just fantastic to work with. So tonight, we're going to give you a state of the state on the libraries. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather Peachy, and she's the coordinator of libraries here in Wilmington.
Yep, I am library coordinator. I've been so for 3 or 4 years. And I want to say thank you for having me here. I love talking about libraries, so I'll try to keep it short because I could talk all night. Let's see, oh, it's going to work. But first, I have a quiz for you. I do. First question, how many books are there in the Wilmington Public Schools libraries? Does anybody want to take a guess? A, B, C, or D?
A.
Incorrect. The answer is D. We have 44,000 books in our collection. District.
my hint on that was that that's less than the minimum number that students checked out.
Well, there you go. All right, well, question 2. Yeah. How many books did our students check out during the 2015-2016 school year? Who wants to take a guess?
I hope D. I don't think so. I'm
Go
going to
C.
say D.
C, D?
A.
The answer is D,
Oh,
69,000
D,
books.
that's right.
It's my drop the mic moment. That's pretty great.
There
Yeah,
you go.
That's it. That's the state of our libraries. We've checked, 69,000 is pretty great. We have a couple librarians with us tonight. We have Michelle Kirchen. She's over at the west with myself. And we have Melanie Patterson. She's over the librarian over at Shawsheen. And I am at the north and at the west. And Mary Ellen Danahy couldn't make it tonight, nor could Kate Durkin. So in addition to being librarians, we have our hands in a lot of different committees here in town. We're on the district technology team, National Honor Society selection, summer reading groups, leadership teams, instructional support teams, reading incentive programs, professional development committee. We librarians, we're pretty well represented in a lot of different things, so we're pretty proud of that. We work hard. So I want to tell you a little bit about each level of libraries that we have going on. I'm just going to start with the kindergarten. So unfortunately, the kindergarten librarian positions were cut about 8 years ago, as best I can figure. We are lucky that we have some parent volunteers that currently staff the kindergarten libraries, and the little kindergartners come in for about 30 minutes once a week, and the parents check in and check out the books, and they're keeping the shelves pretty well maintained. They're also running a book fair to keep the books resupplied, which is great, and I send them, every now and then I send them some book supplies and talk to them. My goals for the kindergarten library would clearly be to get them staffed again with librarians. That's kind of out of my hands. So the other goal that I have for them is to get the books automated into our catalog this year. And this can easily be done. I'm going to start in the next couple weeks. Each of the kindergarten books has to be tagged and marked and then entered into the computer. But once it's in the catalog, it really is a great asset for the school system. It's easier to check in and check out the books of the little kindergartners, but it also makes those books available district-wide to the teachers who might need those as resources. So it's wonderful. So hopefully by the end of this year, both kindergarten buildings will be automated in our catalog. It's great. Our elementary schools, our libraries are great. We're strong. Every student comes into our library once a week for 45 minutes. Our librarians are passionate about what we do, and we love to teach our children how to love reading. We like to get them engaged with books, and we'll do just about anything we need to do to get them to be that way. We're teaching them about authors and genres and finding their just right book. This is a term that we're using this year that goes along with the new ELA curriculum. Every student has to have a just right book that they can read at their instructional level. So we work on that hard every single week. We're teaching different searching strategies using the online catalog. We're introducing the idea of databases. We're introducing research skills, bibliographies, a little bit of plagiarism. We're still teaching some old-fashioned reference materials. It's still important to know how to use a dictionary. It's important to still know what an atlas is, because you cannot count on your phone all the time. With the older students, mostly fifth graders, we're teaching website evaluation. We're introducing digital citizenship skills. We're using our Google Docs and our Google accounts more in the fifth grade, incorporating the Chromebooks that we now have at those levels as well. So what else? We also support the staff in any possible way that we can. We try to help them with their curriculum. We pull materials for the teachers. We're creating book lists for them. We're working with their individual students that they're sending down. We're pulling books and sending them back up to class. We've also been known to jump in and support students individually in their reading programs. I've taught individual reading groups. Sometimes we're teaching math groups. Sometimes we're in there covering for the teachers' classrooms while they're out testing students. We're constantly in and out and trying to work with the teachers as much as we can. They're so busy that they really need our help, I find, more than ever. We also work with the Wilmington Memorial Library and support their summer reading program. We actually have a really great connection with the Wilmington Memorial Library. We're very lucky, and I think it's quite unique from what I've seen in other towns. We work closely with Barbara Robb, the public children's librarian, and Brittany, she's the teen librarian. In fact, I was emailing Barbara today, and I saw her earlier this week. We're constantly asking them for resources, and they're asking us to promote their programs. It's a really great partnership, I think. We're very lucky. The middle school. I know there's a lot of questions and concerns about the middle school. The middle school librarian position was accessed last spring. Currently, I have some of my former parent volunteers that were at the elementary level volunteering to cover the middle school library. They're there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they're there to help the kids check in and check out books and help the teachers find the resources that they may need. The library curriculum is currently being taught by the tech integration specialist, Brenda Lamano. She's very busy doing that. Her curriculum consists of teaching some more advanced research techniques, really truly trying to get these kids prepared for what they might need in middle school. She's doing researching with the online databases. She's doing more advanced research, website evaluation. She's covering digital safety and digital citizenship again. She's working on presentation skills, bibliographies, plagiarism, things that we introduce at the elementary levels, she's trying to cover even more at the middle school level. Do you want to say something about the middle school?
So I did some research on what was the impetus for not filling the library position. So during the FY17 budgeting process, the importance of providing social and emotional support at the middle school was becoming a priority because of the numerous hospitalizations and other diagnoses of the students. So mental health became definitely the priority. So to support this priority, the middle school principal made the decision to provide staffing for the Student Support Center. And to that end, the librarian was not filled for this school year. So now that we're in the FY18 budgeting cycle, we're going to make every effort to restore the librarian to the middle school.
And not having a librarian, I would say, has impacted our program at both levels. There is a definite hole at the middle school level now. We often, at the elementary school levels, rely on some of the books at the middle school for our higher readers. And so does the high school level. They're relying on books for their lower readers. So there's a definite gap in some of our services, and I'm doing my best to make up that gap, trying to fill in with the parents and run over there and do my best. But it's definitely affected our program, I think, which is too bad, for sure. All right, at the high school, we're currently working with a library commons model, which is very trendy nowadays, I should say. Instead of having your old-fashioned library where kids are sitting and reading in the study carrels and doing their work, the library commons model really calls for more of a flexible space where kids can work in smaller groups, perhaps have a small study group in this corner, work in a larger group over here. A teacher can bring in a group and work with them. And we still have 1,800 books in our collection. It may not look like it on the shelves, but we're fairly well stocked. The model that we're using is that the high school libraries are research-based and require more up-to-date online resources than print sources can provide. Therefore, 75% of the library budget is spent on subscription databases. The remaining money is spent on print resources. Any resources that are not purchased can be accessed through the other school libraries and through our connection with the Wilmington Memorial Library or the other public libraries in the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium. So we can track down any resource that our students need. Our high school librarian is great at getting whatever these students might want for their projects. So to support the students, the high school librarian is trying to effectively and efficiently teach these students how to conduct their research, evaluate their sources again, take notes, outline, incorporate their notes into some sort of original product. Her goal at the high school level is for these skills to be second nature by the end of their sophomore year, so that the students can focus on the content of their papers rather than the structure of their research as they get further into their high school years. She's working on teaching them how to annotate bibliographies and to avoid intentional or unintentional plagiarism. She's co-teaching a digital citizenship class with Julie Kelly, is that right? Julie Kelly, and she's emphasizing database research with the freshmen. She's also working with some study skills classes, and she's working with some students on a one-to-one basis to provide some alternate space for students who may need a quieter setting. She has a wonderful connection with Brittany, our teen librarian at the Wilmington Memorial Library. Every 3 weeks, Brittany brings over a big stack of books, and she and Kate will display them, and the students are able to check out those books that belong to the public library, but they're able to check them out here at the high school. So there's never not enough resources for these kids to read. They also work with the public library to support their events, like the college events they have coming up, SAT information sessions, and things like that. There's the Bookshare program that I was just talking about, and the summer reading. They're very active. We involve the public librarians in with our summer reading program, or our summer reading discussions, I should say, which usually start pretty soon. We start talking about summer reading, which is great. To support the staff, Kate is great at creating project guides for whatever research projects the teachers are working on. She goes into the classrooms to work collaboratively with the classroom teachers. She's sitting in on their meetings as much as she can. She's really pushing those literacy skills into their lessons, and she is really pushing the databases as well. She's working with the special ed department to work with specific students. She's working with our English language learning department to curate some specialized resources for them. She's been working with the foreign language department to get them some curriculum. Actually, I think she was getting them some magazines, some foreign language magazines, and a foreign language database for what they needed. And she's also been teaching a couple of Wilmington University classes on our databases to get the teachers up to speed on what we do. So she's working hard at the high school. And finally, we as a group have written a long-range plan. This long-range plan gets submitted to the state through the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. So we submit the plan to them, and that makes us eligible for their rounds of grants that they have every year. So our plan was just completed. We have to get some more people to sign off on it, sign on the dotted line, and then we'll submit it, and we'll be eligible for their grant process, which will be a nice opportunity, because we love writing grants for the library.
We do.
We do. We do a lot of that. Beg, borrow, and steal whatever we can. Some of the highlights from our long-range plan include continuing to work on our elementary curriculum. We finished a stage 1 of the curriculum this summer with the librarians. We would like to complete stage 2 and stage 3 pretty soon, so that it all gets uploaded into Aspen, and we're using the same format for curriculum design as all the other departments are as well. I'm not sure if you guys are, probably should. The high school and middle school curriculum, we need to start at stage 1, kind of revisit what they have in place and try to redesign it a little bit. So that's in our long-range plan. We'd also love to get that middle school position back. We'd love to get the kindergarten library position back, extend some hours at the high school, and continue to work on our own professional development. We consider ourselves kind of be the forefront of the technology in our buildings. We're oftentimes the first go-to people when the printer's not working, or something, the password's broken, or something's breaking down. So well, it's true. It's true. It's true. You plug it in again, restart it. So we're trying to make sure our professional development's up to snuff as much as we can. So that is libraries in a nutshell, and I know you probably have some questions for us.
I do.
Yeah.
When you talk about stage 1 for the curriculum development, the library curriculum development for
Right.
the middle school and the high school,
High
you
school,
said?
yeah.
Would it be appropriate to involve, or perhaps you already do, involve the public library staff in kind of sharing some information?
At some point, yes.
okay.
But a lot of what we do, I mean, we have a curriculum in place.
Yeah.
It's revamping, revisiting, updating. So I'm sure there'd be an appropriate spot to pull them in. Yeah, absolutely. And they're so eager to
Yeah,
work with us, and we love
absolutely.
working with them. They're fabulous.
That's
Really
great
just
to
a hidden
hear.
gem in this town, I think.
Great.
Maybe not hidden, but a gem. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Kane?
I'm a former English teacher, and I'm also the president of the Friends of the Library for our local library for the last few years. Don't go on a trip to Spain, because if you do, you come back president. That's how I got it. Robert can testify to that. That's a true story. So I have to say, especially having a grandchild at the middle school, I was horrified about what happened to the library. And I've had a number of questions from the trustees of our main library and others. And so I did say, I was so glad you were coming tonight, because I could look into this. One of the questions I have when you're telling us about this, how is Brenda Romano teaching this curriculum? Are classes coming into
Yeah.
her, and is she doing it in the library or in her classroom?
I can speak to this.
Yeah.
Brenda is taking the classroom, the classes in her media, she calls it the media, they call it the media lab at the middle school.
Right, yeah.
And unfortunately, obviously, that's impacting her ability to do technology integration. So this is kind of, bad for both kind of a situation. I mean, we're glad she's taking the library, but something else is suffering, you know what I mean?
But are those students coming in with their whole class to her?
Yes, it's a fixed, it's their assigned class. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, so that's that one. I was supposed to ask you about the reasoning behind it, but you've told us that was good. And the plan for the use of the school library, this is a 1 year, we're hoping,
Hope so, yeah. Hope
Yes,
so.
because I totally support putting a librarian back in that middle school, without a doubt. And what is happening to the budget for the school library this year? Did we not budget one at all? Because we usually budget like $1,000, maybe Paul knows this.
Yeah,
We usually budget
budget's
money for
there.
each of the libraries.
They had a budget of $700.
And so so would it be up to you to add
I
books,
was going
Heather,
to
or-
spend that money, but clearly I didn't get to it in time.
Oh, okay. We see what we can do.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right,
There
and
probably will
so
not
you
be
would
a-
be selecting the books for that library?
I would do my best,
And the
yeah.
materials,
Yeah.
okay. And the collaboration, I have to just say, the library feels the same way that you do. The collaboration with the high school, with the middle school, I'm sorry, with the
public library.
Wilmington Memorial Library, Public Library, is so important to everybody. And it's really, we don't want a gap up through I can tell from my own grandchildren, and probably other people here would agree. The kids in the elementary school are loving reading and seeing the selection, and we just went to the north to the book fair that they had. And my granddaughter, as she greeted me in the hall, went, "You went to the bank before you got here, didn't you, Hannah?" So, my granddaughter could write your things at night, Steve, your comedy. She's incredible. But anyway, they're so excited, and we don't want to lose that enthusiasm in that little area of sixth, seventh grade.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important. And would you please tell everybody about what you got last year, and you brought through the grants?
Just the James Patterson grant? Yeah, so last year, James Patterson donated $1.5 million of his own money to school libraries, and you had to write a 300-word essay as to how you would use the money. Is that what it was? How you would use the money. So I wrote this 300-word essay. I started off by saying, I love my job, our books are falling apart. I tell the kids that just means that everyone loves those books, and the kids are great sports about it. And then I submitted it, and then I deleted it because I never thought I was going to get any money. And the first round of grants went out, and they went out to the bigger school systems like Boston, Lowell, and Worcester. And then I was notified in November that I'd received $5,000, and I was thrilled.
That was,
And it was about 400 new books, 450 new books. So I stretched it as much as I could.
that is so wonderful, but if you didn't take the time to do that, we wouldn't have had that.
No,
So definitely, you're watching and taking advantage of what's out there. So I just want to say thank you, you're doing a wonderful
Well, it's
job.
kind of the nature of what librarians do. We are always
Yes, yeah.
sniffing out whatever we can get our hands on, truly, right? Don't you feel, yeah, really.
Yeah.
So if you're going to offer it, we're going to go for it.
Right. We're so glad to have you here tonight, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's very helpful. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Bjork?
So I absolutely know what your granddaughter was talking about. I visited the West Book Fair today,
Oh, yeah.
the Shawshing Book Fair a little while ago, and I've got 2 more. So, yeah.
Supporting the school, Steve?
Yeah,
Yep.
well, but, so I've seen the libraries, and it's fantastic to see the kids. They're running around, they're all excited about the books. And I understand that the bulk of our money is spent on online resources, but there's nothing like the ability for a kid to pull books off the shelf, look at the covers, and I think it's so important. And I'm going to echo Peggy's comment about the middle school librarian. And certainly that would be one of my top priorities to see that reinstated. I do have a quick question. You said you wanted to extend the hours at the high school library?
They just wanted, there's been a push to keep the hours open after school. There's a lot of kids here after school that are here until all hours. If we could just make that make that space available to them, I think it'd be wonderful.
I agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Talbot?
Maybe Ms. Bjork could donate his book to the library.
I don't know about the, I don't know about the elementary schools.
That's a good one.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much for attending. This was really helpful and much needed, so we appreciate it. Sorry it got pushed off
It's all right.
at least once. Great. I think our next item of business is financial reports. Mr. Ruggiero.
Thank you. In front of you, you have 2 final financial reports for FY16. And I think we've mentioned in the past, we have finally finalized FY16. working with FY17 and am in the middle of getting ready for FY18, so a bunch of things going on. So, but FY16, the final reports are here. As far as revolving accounts go, you notice that every revolving account ended in the black, which is good. So I'm very pleased with that. So we all have good balances in our revolving accounts, and these funds roll over year to year. In our financial report, our budget was $36,197,557. We spent $36,188,697, and we ended in the black by $8,860. So another good year for the district. We stayed within our budget and accomplished everything we really needed to accomplish. So with this, I'm now working on my end-of-the-year report that has to be submitted to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education by Friday. So I will have that uploaded to them probably Friday morning with all this information.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Mrs. Kane?
This is kind of not exactly directed, but it says here on the one-to-one Chromebook program, could we at our next meeting have an update on that program? Would that be possible?
Yeah, we can add that to the agenda.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you, Tristan. Great, Mrs. Billings?
I know we touched upon the report that from October 12th, this past week. I didn't look at this piece. Going forth, because if this is the same question I ask this time of year, every year. My biggest concern is the McKinney-Vento line item, which is, you can't anticipate, you can only guesstimate. Going forth with what we know going into this year, and if, would you budget it any differently? I mean, I know it's I know it's a, forgive the phrase, but it's a crapshoot per se, but it looked like it, and maybe I'm just still new in this, $109,000.
We spent a lot on McKinney-Vento transportation
Yes.
this past fiscal year. A
Right.
couple years ago, it was 35,000.
Exactly,
Another
yes.
year was 55, 65.
It's
This
just
year
a
was
big hit.
It really depends on the number of, and it's not all our students.
Mm-hmm.
We have milestones, so any child who is placed there and goes to another district, we have to cost share with them.
Right.
And we had some, and some of them can be, a pretty good distance. So we cost, if the child's from Beverly, for instance, gets put in Wilmington, we cost share with the city of Beverly, the cost of transporting that child. You just don't know, it could be a bunch of students that where they get transported back to is quite a distance, so there's more cost, versus it could be some Tewksbury or whatever, so the cost is a little bit less. It's really difficult to tell, and it fluctuates all. I think the first year, the state, when they got into their budget, that towns would get reimbursed for a portion of the cost. I think we had the lowest year that we've ever had.
Really?
So the first time, but then it's spiked since there, so it's kind of difficult to
Gauge,
really tell, yeah.
All right, I just didn't know if it was something, especially with the,
Yeah, you just don't know.
as we start this process here, and then, I'd like to, at some point, go before the board and ask for their approval to go speak to representatives after we settle in a little bit further here, to discuss any possible interest in helping our initiatives and these unfunded mandates especially, to try to get some type of support, I guess, for lack of a better term, at this juncture. Thank you, Paul.
The other piece too, I think as working with Jen Mahan in our special education department and kind of looking at maybe developing more in-house programs that will help, the Wilmington families and keeping students here
Absolutely.
instead of, sending them off,
Well, I
best
think
of our
that's
ability.
the goal, and I think with that transition, it's building, it's it's like curriculum, it never stops developing, right?
Right, right.
So, but yeah, I hope so, and I'm sure we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the financial reports? All right, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Public comment. We cleared the room after the library presentation. Okay. Other reports. I think the first one on our agenda, there was an October 20th meeting of the Facilities Management Planning Commission. Sort of.
There was sort of
Okay.
one, because the consultant didn't actually show up.
Ah,
So we ended
Okay.
up just kind of chatting for under an hour and then ending the meeting, and we're going to go back to meeting November 3rd, which was the other scheduled one that had been. Oh, they did?
I think they did.
I think you're correct,
Yeah, I think it's the 17th is the next one, I believe.
Oh, it's the 17th, okay.
Yeah, I think the consultant, excuse me, but I think the
That's right,
consultant
I
had
did
a
get that one, okay.
previous commitment for
Yeah.
November 3rd, so they had to,
Yeah, did you
Post-
find out why he didn't show up
he showed up about 7:30.
it was a 6 o'clock meeting.
okay. Well,
So, yeah, so
that wasn't
we
traffic.
really, we kind of just chatted about some of the options, but there was nothing meaty about it.
Okay. The next meeting on November 17th, is that going to be focused on municipal buildings or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. We're not sure where that one's going to be yet.
okay.
It will either be here or Town Hall, I'm not sure. They were talking about moving it back to Town Hall, but we don't know yet.
Okay, so stay tuned for more information on that. Okay. Mrs. Burns, you had asked about the since you're going to be attending the MASC annual meeting for us as our delegate, you had asked about resolution number 2?
Yes, that pertains to the tax reform ballot question. I watched the October 12th meeting to just try to get an idea with regards to the reasoning behind the committee voted against this. And I know Mrs. Kane raised a good point that the ballot question derives from going after the most wealthiest of residents to supplement this reform ballot. But I wasn't quite sure if I understood the argument in its entirety, so that if it serves itself to speak to it at the delegate convention, I just want to make sure I had an understanding as to what the view of the body was giving as reasoning behind it.
Oh,
You're on the spot, Mrs. Kane.
I
Thank you,
brought
Mrs.
it up on
Burns.
my phone if, I'm sorry, not to put you on the spot.
No. I just personally felt that whenever I see something that only a certain segment of the population is supposed to be paying for, I personally find that offensive, and I don't go that way. In teaching negotiations I used to be involved in, they would try to get things for everybody who's been teaching 10 years or more, and the people who've come on board kind of fend for themselves, and I just learned not to like that.
Okay.
So I just said, as my personal opinion, I did not want to vote for this.
Would it be safe to say, and I'll welcome anyone's opinion, that other, to capitalize on or segue into that we would prefer to see other resources being tapped in as well, or, I mean, how should I don't have to speak, but I just didn't know, not knowing what the conversation would lead to with regards to that. Someone else could possibly raise it in another district, which is perfectly fine, but I just thought I'd try to get a little more insight from what everyone was thinking.
I know, and, we never asked the guys, we never asked if that is a realistic thing from our point of view here. I'm not sure.
I think it's a valid point, because, and I'll read the last paragraph to this reform. It states, now therefore it be resolved that the MASC explore ways to promote social and economic equity through a ballot initiative whose purpose may include a state constitutional amendment, tax reform, protection of the state's neediest residents of all ages, and seeks additional revenue only from a tax reform affecting the state's wealthiest residents. Further, that the goal of such a ballot referendum would be to secure a stronger financial base to underwrite needed improvements in the infrastructure of the Commonwealth, as well as the educational, social, and economic well-being of its residents. I don't know.
So the tax reform piece is only one part of this. That was why I did not vote against it. I actually voted for it. Whose purpose may include a state constitutional amendment, comma, tax reform, comma, protection of the state's neediest residents of all ages, seeks, and then it says, and seeks additional revenue only from tax reform affecting, so that's only one piece of it. That's why I wasn't against it. I mean, and it's just exploring it. It's not saying they're gonna, do it.
Okay, because it was voted down by the board on
I know.
October 12th, so I didn't.
Right.
All right.
voted too.
I didn't
I just
vote
wanted to
against
make
it,
sure
but-
if that, in fact, that was the only view for that to be voted down, that's all I wanted, just to make sure I was clear with.
I voted against it, so I'll put my 2 cents in, and my thoughts echo Peggy's, especially when the terminology is the state's wealthiest. That's a very subjective and vague term that can be used in such a wide spectrum, that I didn't like the phraseology.
Okay, that helps, All right, if that was it, I didn't want to make more of it than what it was, I just wanted to make sure I was clear in understanding the thought. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports this evening? Mrs. Kane?
I just wanted to make a brief statement about the CPAC, that, of course, again, the CPAC is all parent volunteers, and they are having their next meeting, business meeting, at the high school library at 6:30 on Thursday, November 3rd. And they love to have new people come. And then, once again, the Wilmington Library is really into our meeting tonight. On November 14th, there's going to be a great workshop, Financial Planning for Children with Special Needs, at the Wilmington Library at 7 o'clock. So I'm not sure if that might be the first time they're doing something in concert with the library. So it's being advertised through the library, and then we could just mention it to advertise it too. So that's where we are with the CPAC now.
Great, thank you. Any other subcommittee reports? No? Okay. Correspondence?
Nothing.
We don't have any correspondence. Okay. Future meeting dates and agenda items. Our next meeting will be November 9th. That will be our only meeting in November, as is our tradition. And we will make note on the agenda for November 9th to add an update on the one-to-one Chromebook initiative, please. Okay, and with that, we had, early in our meeting, we had moved to put our executive session to later this evening, and we've gotten to that later point. So the Wilmington School Committee will enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. I will ask for a motion to enter executive session from which we will not return.
So moved.
Okay, second? Mrs. Bonnet, ping pong. Okay, this requires a roll call vote. Mr. Bjork?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonish?
Yes.
Mrs. Broussard, yes. Mrs. Burns?
Yes?
Mrs. Keane, you need to abstain.
Yes, I say yes for
For to enter-
going in, but
going
I
in.
noted on the record, please, that I'm abstaining. I won't be attending the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Mullis is not here this evening, and Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So moved.